I'm going to try and lasso you in to the center of something by talking about some edges. This idea that I have expressed as being the partnership that many of you seem to have picked up on quite readily, and you like the term and the kind of new area in which it points out, as opposed to many of life's current descriptions of the internal workings of the so-called human mind or human consciousness. Let me start out again tonight by pointing out that this partnership situation is unique to man. And it can be seen in a certain way as being life's own contradictory state. And the way in which it works in man, I want to specifically in several areas try and pull your attention toward there could be that I could describe as being sort of the alpha state, the first level of one's observation and understanding of this partnership situation. If you're not attentive, just in this first state of just becoming aware that it's going on or having it pointed out, if you're not attentive, the partner's speed goes absolutely unchecked. And what you've got to do to get out of this first condition, this first state, is you have to reach a stage of a kind of continual awareness of the partner's own ramblings, of this continual talking, this mumbling that he does, that all of you had many occasions to be aware of. And you discover, as opposed to your partner, whatever's left, whatever it is that seems to be you undertaking this, is you find that you are faster than he or she is. And that's how you keep him or her from making unseemly comments, whether they come out overtly or not. Are we running? Now, you could look at this as a variation when I was attempting to use a more physiological description of pointing out to you that the neurons, in a sense, seem to set up and prepare themselves to fire. That I have used this on past occasions, and many of you seem to have gotten something from that, not simply a description, but to realize yourself, as has never been pointed out in psychology, neurology, physiology, or religion, is not simply a matter that a person thinks something. That once you find the way to stand aside from it, once you find the way to climb on top of it, to get under it, to find a crack, is you can see apparently what your brain is about to think, but in that time it hasn't really thought it. You're just aware, this is what I'm about to think. I already hear the words I'm about to say, well, that dumb son of a bitch. And you find out that even though you're aware of what the neurons are already primed up to fire off, or another one of my pictures, what's coming out of the projector, it's already in midair coming from the projector to the screen, and you can see it in midair, and you can stop it in a sense. It's already there. And you can, in a sense, not think what you were going to think while knowing what it was. You cannot say that which you knew you were about to say. But another description that may be easier to handle, and it is still right on the money, which is easy for me to say because no one else has ever pointed this out, so I have no competition, is when you are not paying attention, even after you become aware that this phenomenon seems to be going on. Or as life would have it right now, I guess the widest explanation has been the unconscious mind. And psychology has completely got mired up in that. Life's going to have to take another direction. Because in general, they would not even concede that what I'm talking about is possible. It's just as far as life took it in one direction. But even after you become aware of the fact that through all kinds of mapping and observations that I can point out to you, then through the kinds of tasks I've given, through your own efforts to look at it, you can simply become aware of the fact, without any great understanding, without any further explanation at the time, that it's as though I was born into a partnership, that there is me and then there's somebody else inside. And even after you're aware of that, if you do not find a way to be continually aware of it, the speed at which the partner operates is totally uncontrollable. But once you find out that you can have a continuing awareness of what the partner is mumbling about, as soon as you find that you can have a continual awareness of it, you also discover that you are faster. Now, this is all unnatural. It's not just a common parlor trick that you can go out and teach humanity. Not now. But all you've got to do is have an awareness of the partnership, then a continuing awareness of his mumbling. And as soon as you reach a point of having a kind of continual awareness of it, you simultaneously discover that you are faster than he or she is. You can then keep this other side of this partnership from making all of these unseemly, unprofitable observations and comments. If you can't do that, then you're locked into forever a very unprofitable situation. In a sense, you cannot let the partner, once you become responsible at all, you cannot let the partner say anything that you wouldn't say. I guess we could make that a tenet of our church if we were a church, or one of the tenets, because that is easy enough for me to say, and many of you chuckled. But you cannot let the partner say. You cannot let it get to the voice level, even if it's just inside your own brain. You cannot let it get to the picture level, even if it's just inside your own picturesque consciousness. You cannot drive down the street and gaze upon someone, a short green person with purple hair, and the partner say, "There goes another one of those dumb bastards." Whereas you might say, let us assume, well, I certainly wouldn't say that. That is some form of my unconscious mind. That's a result, direct result of the poor environment in which I grew up. I grew up around prejudiced people. I can't help it. It's something that I probably should work out, or it's something that's beyond my control. It's something that the gods will have to cure in an afterlife. You simply cannot let the partner say anything that you wouldn't say. It doesn't matter how you cut this. It doesn't matter how you try to divide it up. Everyone already, even the general public, if I wanted to present this in some form, the general public would admit, by and large, any averagely sophisticated, educated person, that there does seem to be two people in me, where I seem to have conflicting desires, conflicting opinions. To be aware of that, it doesn't matter which one you call it. Notice I just started out telling you it was a partnership. It seems to be you and then this other guy, this other girl. Of course, we hadn't got convoluted enough, or I haven't. Some of you surely have already skirted out or skated out in this area. Is that if you do try to identify it at any one time, all right, there's me, and then there's this partner. You get real good, and suddenly you, what you're calling you, is the partner, and you're identifying what was previously you is now the partner, which is a whole nother night. But it doesn't matter how you do it. Whoever it is that seems to be in charge at any given time would be the one that says, I disapprove of having thoughts like this. It's just mechanical prejudice coming out that I attack somebody else's religion or their nationality. That's not really me. I know better. I would not do that in civilized company. And at least I've reached the point that I won't say it out loud. That's not good enough, is all you should suspect. Even all the religions say it's not good enough. They just say that humanity is not strong enough to do anything about it, unless the gods in some way struck a miracle in you. But you cannot let the partner say. You can hear him begin. You know what's going on. He is about to turn around at somebody and make some negative comment. And just because you can keep your mouth shut, that's no big deal. You're just wired up for fear. You're afraid to say it. But you cannot let the partner say it to you. You can't do it. And much of what many people, including, not excluding you people, that you still think you suffer over, is having these untoward thoughts, these unseemly thoughts, these secretive, dark, dank thoughts that you feel is something's got to be done about it. Surely one day a miracle will happen and I'll get over these thoughts. You just cannot let the partner say anything. You can hear him about to say it. You know exactly what he's going to say. And you can stop him, because you cannot let him or her say anything that you, whatever seems to be you at the time making this observation, that you wouldn't say. That's simple enough to put into words. You simply cannot do it. How about this? How about a possible beta stage? What if you could get the partner continually involved with neuralizing instead of his circuitous ramblings? Now, I've pointed out to you that it's not a matter of stopping the partner. It's not a matter of the tiger behind the door is someday going to shut up. In a sense, it's never going to shut up any more than you're going to quit dreaming. There is yellow circuit activity that's got to go on. There's energy that's got to be transmitted, transformed. And much of it takes place in the area that seems to be not you, that seems to be the partner. It seems to be my old tiger behind the door. But what if it was possible, he asked, that you could apparently, to some degree, go about your everyday business? That there you are, you're working at McDonald's, you got to pay attention to what people are saying, you got to keep track of the orders and what's, count money, ask if you've been served. That would apparently be you. You can't leave such important fiscal matters, making no comment on the menu, but important fiscal matters cannot be left to the mumblings of the partner. Well, not any great length of time. Come to think about it, maybe I picked out the wrong example of McDonald's, because come to think about it, the times I've been in there, the people do seem to be operating on the automatic partner level. Now, well, the partner apparently has got to be turning his consciousness on some matter at hand, assuming there is some matter at hand, driving the car, or something that takes some specific conscious awareness on your part. What if, under the conditions which all of us face, that large segments of your life are taken up with you apparently having to turn some degree of real attention to some matter out there, such as making a living. Instead of this rumbling, this mumbling, this circular, it's not even spiral, it's just circular mumbling going on that the partner does, what if you could get that thing to neuralizing on your behalf? In other words, what everybody else, to varying degrees as much as life has told them, what they think of as being the uncontrollable, unusable, unconscious part. What if you could put it to work? And I did all this as a rhetorical question. What if? So since I've killed several minutes here after that preface, let me ask you this. How do you think people that ever get anywhere with this do it? Because all of you have been around enough now to know that you cannot sit down and figure this out. You cannot suddenly walk out in the street, even though I say, hey, everything runs into another dimension. I even see these strange pictures. Perhaps you assume, well, there's some spatial reality that perhaps I'm pointing to, not just allegorically. So I'll walk out in the street and go, it doesn't get you anywhere. Some of this seems to make so much sense that I'll take notes and I'll go home and I'll think about it and I'll get in a relaxed position and I'll pour a cup of coffee and I'll look at it and go, what is it at the times that we'll assume all of you have had small taste of already, that there seems to just be flashes that you're in the middle of a very mundane situation? And perhaps as far as you could recount it, that you apparently were not even thinking about anything connected with this. That you're talking about the time of day, the weather, the stock market, something perhaps with a stranger, and suddenly it's one of these low-level mystical experiences, as ordinary people would call it. Did you suddenly realize something that may or may not apparently have anything directly to do with what's going on, but suddenly you see something about the nature of man, the energy transformer. You see something about the nature of human intercourse not being a psychological phenomenon, that it is a physical phenomenon, it is a factory situation. How do you explain that? Is it something that you suddenly did that you went, well, I believe I'll have a deep insight into some area based upon my conversation here with this guy over the price of kumquats. Here I go. As you all know, it's not that simple. As all of you should know, the libraries are filled in the Dewey Decimal Mystical section with tomes about people who had a, quote, mystical experience and how weird it was because they don't know what happened. What if there could be a kind of beta condition? I'm not referring anything to brainwaves, by the way. I shouldn't have used those terms. Another level. That you could get the partner involved with a constant attempt to neuralize behind whatever you were doing. If apparently you were pressed into service, connected with out there, such as making a living, talking about something in which you had no interest, just doing the most prosaic, taking care of the most prosaic affairs, and you could get the partner involved with attempting to continually neuralize what you and everything else was up to. I suggest that you should find that an interesting possibility. Or maybe even that I slipped up and hinted to something that, just a thought, just a question. Since I'm asking questions, how about this from last week? I was pointing out that in a quite real sense, to shift the map a little bit, when I drew the circuits and pointed out that there is the activity of the circuits, and then there can be an awareness of consciousness and the circuits activity. Then let me ask you this. Which voice might the partner be? That of the circuits or that of consciousness? And whichever one you might surmise, since I made it easy and only gave you two choices, and whichever one you might guess, then that leaves that the other one's got to be who? Of course, then you might say, well, wait a minute. I picked the wrong one. So then try it the other way. But then you're back left with how about this for a sermon topic? Good cheer and its strain on the partnership. Or how about above the line data and unnatural stress on the partnership? And can anyone, even for a second, imagine there might be any connection between that and the possibility of getting the partner involved with a continual attempt to neuralize for you what appears to be for you? Someone should find that of small interest, especially if I hang here for a few more seconds and you assume it's some kind of hint. But since the partner seems to be, from one viewpoint, a particular pain, if not a deadly enemy, even though I've told you it's not quite that simple, but he appears to be of hardly any use whatsoever. Let us go that far. So rather than being in that condition, what if you get him to working for you? How about another sermon topic? How about the possibility? I'll go back and call that the beta possibility. That is, of getting the partner to continually attempt to neuralize for you. How about this for another sermon topic? The beta possibility of the partnership and the historic speaking of the gods to man. Well, given your choice, I assume that any right-thinking person would prefer to have the gods speak to you directly than to entertain any such possibility as I have put forth here of having the partner working for you in the continual attempt to neuralize. Unless they're not as far apart as Fort Dix and Birmingham. I was going to talk about some questions that I continue to receive and comments, both from people here and then the growing number of people that are getting all this by tape. But let me ease up on some of the questions. How about some more rambling about life in general? All of you have read articles and books or heard a speaker, let us say speaking on Texans. And you, some combination of you and the partner, are reading the article, sitting there listening to someone on TV. And they speak on the particular aspect, the unusual aspect, the singularity of Texans, the culture, the way they treat other people, their nationalistic attitudes, their attitudes toward their state, their attitudes toward each other, their attitudes toward pickup trucks and hound dogs. And you sit and listen. This is a man with credentials, well-known writer. You're sitting there, or reading it, sitting there listening, and you're flowing along. Neither you or the partner is making any question of it. Perhaps sometimes you nod along, yeah, that's Texans for you. It all makes a lot of sense. It just sounds right. I mean, they're talking about a phenomenon. There's no doubt. You're not questioning it. But now let me ask you, where is the actual boundaries that differentiates a Texan from a Louisianan or an Oklahoman. Except before I brought that out, surely all of you hear what I'm talking about. I just picked out one example out of almost everything. I could have used religions, nations. But the reason I picked that, because on the surface it seems rather innocuous, but it seems quite real. We're talking about one country, same language, same people, and yet their books, their courses taught. It's an accepted fact that there is a Texan. There is a kind of phenomenon. He could be described in sociological, psychological, nationalistic terms. And quite ordinary people, quite educated, quite sophisticated, including you people, can read something like that or listen to someone talk about it, and you flow right with it. It's a quite real magnetic feel to it that there is a Texan. But then, as large as that state is, I assure you that there are places, that there are towns in Texas, and there's a line, and there's another town, or maybe the same town, that there's a line drawn there, and right over here is Louisiana. And I assure you, as you should know, that there are families, that there are brothers that grew up in Texas, and now one of them is perhaps moved over a half-mile away. He built another house, he got a good price on the property, but he happens to be now in Louisiana. But he can almost throw a rock from his house to his brother's house in Texas. And so then, it should start leading you to ask, if you're going to follow what I'm saying, while realizing I'm not talking about Texas or anything else in the real world, what differentiates? How do you draw a boundary? Then I ask you, what is the purpose of this? Why is so much of literature, so much of human activity been used up in histories, and this is thousands of years old, it's not a new phenomenon, as all of you should know, of attempting to describe what is a Roman citizen, what is an Athenian, as opposed to a Peloponnesian, that there is something real that we're describing here of people who live in Athens, Greece, or people who live in Waco, Texas, separated by 5,000 years, that there is something real. But then you start investigating the people that live in Waco, and 32% of them moved from out of state. You started investigating 5,000 years ago the people who live in Athens, and you find out that 22% of them were captured slaves. They weren't born there. They don't even consider themselves to be Grecian. But then consciousness would shake its head, well, wait a minute, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about some kind of phenomenon wherein there are actual boundaries drawn, and there is a dynamics to the concept of a Texan, of an Athenian. All right, let me propose a piece of a map for you. Like me having the baby feed you again. And somewhere you should feel, some of you, is this as soon as I say it. Do I have to spend any more of the setup for this? There is a need to draw what life is doing through man, that there is a need to draw external boundaries, and that they are a reflection of the yellow circuit detailing of this versus that. All of you should be aware, all of you, probably most of you at least, have voices in you that have cried out and still cries out about the injustice, cum stupidity in the world. People fighting over a little strip of land that's been going on 2,000 years. Or people of the same nationality fighting because one group fell under the sway of one religion and half their families fell under the sway of another. They live in the same community and they fight each other, throw fire bombs, and some little piece of your partnership says, good grief. When will humanity wake up? When will this kind of stupidity cease? Why do people fight over boundaries when they're meaningless? Why do people fight over not just the geographical boundaries of some little locale that they're fighting over, that the property wouldn't bring $20 an acre in Alabama if they could move it there? But it's not just limited to geopolitical boundaries. It's why do people draw up boundaries and say, I am a Christian and you are a Catholic, or I am a Muslim and you are a Jew, and there's a line drawn here. And part of life's body, of course, it's not humanity's fault, part of life's body is involved. Another reflection of its contradictory nature, contradictory structure through which it grows. It's part of life's body does condemn it and laughs at it. If at any time you do laugh at it and your partnership says, how dumb, I cannot believe that these people who are fighting over a religion, are fighting over an imaginary line drawn to separate some portion of their country or this planet, I can't believe that these are fellow human beings. I am not that dumb. That's dumb squared. You didn't make that up. You didn't come to that conclusion, be it fallacious or otherwise. That's part of life's conclusion. It's how dumb. But simultaneously, of course, life is making these other people draw these lines and saying, over this line thou shalt not step with impunity. There is the continuing need. You can feel it in yourself. You should be able to, even if you live in an apartment, you rent. The feeling in some way there's a boundary to this. There's a place I park my car. I don't mind other people in this apartment building speaking to me. If my door is open in the summertime, they might wave when they go by, but there's a feeling if somebody I don't know, for them to put their head in the door and say, how's it going, sport? There's a thing like, don't do that. Damn it, if I want you in, I'll call you in. Wave when you go by. Nobody asks you to put your head in the door. Of course, it's not verbal. I'm putting words on it. It's in lower circuits than that. If you got any doubt about that, watch the way your dog pisses all over the place to mark out, hey, don't come in here. There is a similarity. But taking it from the lower circuits, that's what I was trying to point your direction to. That is the basis of it. But then there is also a need when it gets into the higher circuits, specifically the yellow circuit, continually delineating this versus that. But you can see this from all the way from the lower red circuit factory level in the human industry, where it is nonverbal, where it is that you don't want somebody stepping into your apartment, or you people in California, you don't want people getting in your space. It's not an attack. That does define something that's real. It's just, it's now become common parlance, and I couldn't resist giving it a little kick. But it is an interesting concept. For you people in California, concept has now left California and it's now here. That's the, everything is now a concept, which is in itself an interesting you-know-what. But there is quite real the possession of space. There is quite real a territorial defensive mechanism drawn in and wired up in everybody. It could be wired into you backwards, but it's still wired in there. But then when it gets on up into the yellow circuit, there is a reflection in that the yellow circuit to operate in its ordinary fashion, which is binary, it has to continually draw borders. And therefore the yellow circuit cannot overcome this whole phenomenon of the yellow circuit, part of life, condemning humans fighting over an imaginary boundary, of people fighting over a non-geographical boundary, that is, the line that divides one religion from another, or one race from another, and we're going to kill each other over it. The yellow circuit is the one that condemns this, not the red circuit. The red circuit never condemns killing. You can't wait on that. It does not. The only thing it condemns is the possibility of getting killed. Or if you want the ultimate, it really condemns getting killed. But it does not condemn killing. That's part of its job. It does not condemn hostility. It does not condemn trying to defend your space. But you get on up, and now what is condemning, what is always condemned through literature, through speeches, through apparent or through attempted political movements, to condemn that kind of red circuit barbarianism is the higher circuits. Higher blue into the yellow circuits condemns it, but it can't stop it because even the yellow circuit itself is involved with that kind of imaginary line drawing. Were it not, the yellow circuit couldn't function. Or as the ordinary people might want to have it, the brain wouldn't work. It would not move. And so the boundaries are continually drawn. Some more of ordinary life. There are numerous examples. There are always examples going on. Sometimes I hesitate drawing out the specific examples in what might be a moot consideration is when I stand here and talk that years from now somebody might hear this tape and the examples I pull out are meaningless then. So for those of you at some later time, I'm just referring to instances wherein something in the civilized world seems to have gone amiss in the midst of the civilized procedures, such as, I guess this will hold up in time for a while, they're still attempting to deal with war criminals from World War II. And right now, one country in Europe has a man that they tracked down, and they've had him in their hands for several years, and he was condemned in all the press and supposedly many eyewitnesses that said the man was just a living piece of bad news. The crimes against humanity, an absolute despicable history supposedly has been evidenced. And now there are cries that he has not been tried, and he's getting so old he may die. There is a constant stream, this will still be true years from now in this country, let me use this country, but it's true in all the civilized world, that the procedures set up judicially continually seem to allow for someone who was involved with a despicable crime, is awaiting execution or has been put away in prisons for the rest of his life. Suddenly, a judge somewhere says, this is not the way in which things should have operated, and he's got to be retried. All right, life, some part of life's body does this. And simultaneously, some part of life's body says that, all right, we have procedures set up. Now, don't get hung up, and I'm just picking out examples that both these cases have to do with the judicial aspect of our institutions, but I could pick out others. Their voices, people with credentials of reason and education say, listen, our judicial system is set up in a civilized, orderly manner, but sometimes there's got to be a way to bypass this, of us continually running around in some kind of judicial circles that allows people who were involved with heinous crimes to, if not go free, at least to remain less than totally convicted. They do not fully receive the punishment due them. And all this stuff about us having an almost endless stream of possible ways in which to appeal the case, and someone who at one time 500 witnesses saw him kill a whole family. They condemned him to death, and it's been 20 years, and he's in and out of courts. He's written a book. He's on television once a year. There ought to be a way to bypass. I mean, enough's enough. It's good that we're civilized and that we have this judicial system that seems to give general, more or less protection to all of us, but enough's enough. There's got to be a way to deal with special circumstances. There is likewise in life's body simultaneously voices that say, nay, nay, on the contrary. It is just in such circumstances that these kinds of civilized procedures must be upheld. That were we to act otherwise, that there's one part of life's body talking through some person, through some group of people, they say that yes, we understand why a large segment of the population, everybody does recall, I'm not talking about the laws and murderers, and I'm not talking about the population much, but this second group says we are aware of the fact that a large number of reasonable people believe that we should have some way to bypass these kind of civilized procedures under special circumstances. We understand why they say that. I understand the feelings, the passion involved. But let us point out that on the contrary, it is under these special conditions wherein we should most faithfully hold to these kind of civilized procedures, that is what makes us civilized. Can any of you, trusting that a few of you followed that, and now jumping from what it appears to be to what I'm really pointing towards, that the few must often move, at least internally, outside of civilized procedures and approaches. And that is not a ticket to ride. That is not an a priori excuse for you to do something despicable, because the reason I went through all those examples and setting up these two groups of people. You remember the group that says under special conditions we ought to have ways to bypass or to transcend or to go work outside civilized procedures, and the other group says, yeah, we know what you mean. But on the contrary, it is exactly under these special conditions wherein we must most faithfully hold to civilized procedures. Nobody would guess that that could be you and your partner. No, we're talking about groups of people. We're talking about situations, right? It is not an excuse for some kind of uncontrollable, uncivilized. It's not an excuse for any kind of particular behavior. But I am pointing out to you that internally at least, you must be prepared and to know how, under special conditions, to move outside of civilized procedures. But you've got to have an awareness of those first two groups. You've got to have an awareness of life's two voices to start with. That there is a group saying under special conditions we ought to have the right to be vigilantes. And then you've got to have a likewise continuing, simultaneous awareness of this other group that says, no, I understand, I feel almost why you could say that, but on the contrary, it's under such conditions that we must most strongly guard against that kind of attitude. You got to have both of those, and then be able to move outside, at least internally, to move outside of civilized approaches. Or, if you would like it a bit stronger, there are many instances where you have no choice. There are many instances, if you cannot do that, you don't get anywhere. Well, I'm glad this is not a democracy for me to say how many people understood any of that. All right, don't take this literally, but after investing that much time, I can't resist giving it a cheap shot for those of you that feel as though you almost heard something and you're not sure what the hell it was. Would you consider the possibility that there are times you got to slap the partner around? I mean in a way that would be considered wife beating if your partner was of an opposite sex from you, or husband beating. Or if there was a great age differential, child abuse. Or if he seemed to be in an opposing army, perhaps war crimes. But you have got to have an awareness first that those groups are speaking for life. One saying under special conditions we ought to be able to be uncivilized and to take care of this condition. I mean, there's some things that must be accounted for immediately. We can't spend forever worrying about the niceties of the law, the niceties of religion, the niceties of morality. And there's another group that has very similar vocal power that says, no, I know why you say that, I know how you feel about it, but it's just under these conditions, that makes it most imperative that we do stay civilized. You got to understand both, then you got to be prepared to slap somebody around. But you can't get involved with it. You can't slap a tar baby and suddenly you become what you're slapping. You got to know how to be uncivilized, and there are instances. All right, many instances you're going to find, if you can make anything out of this somewhere down the road, you cannot be civil, at least internally. And you have got to be prepared to go beyond civilized behavior. That is, unless you plan to live to be 2,000 or 3,000 years old, but then on what you're going to do, because I plan to be checking out of here in not too long, so I won't be here. I've had several people have written questions here, and I received some notes from out of town asking about me saying something else about special head theorems, a term I threw out some weeks back. I don't intend to make another sermon out of this, but since several people did ask, at least let me make it verbally a little more precise if I did not. Special head theorems, when I said you've got to be able to eschew special head theorems, is you got to recognize that life has spoken through man and has produced special head theorems. They're normally referred to in the general guise as psychology. Religion has done it, but they used to say it was down in your heart somewhere, but it was the same thing, a special head theorem, that there is something in man that is unique to the point that there are special rules, special considerations, special conditions, special excuses that apply to the head. If we want to stick with the law for a second, one of the most glaring examples today, I guess, just known to all of you, is the various forms from state to state of not guilty by reason of impaired judgment, or not guilty by reason of insanity, not guilty because of a special head theorem. That yes, there's no doubt that this guy killed his mother. But we've had some psychiatrists talk to him, the police say. Actually, we talked to him 5 minutes. We realized the guy, was about one roll short from getting his roof finished. And now that was just our opinion. We've been around the block. The man is just absolutely incoherent. There's something wrong with him. He was saying that Pee Wee Herman made him do it. Anyway, we had psychiatrists. They worked on him. They tested him. They had him under observation for 2 months. We have a string of teachers, writers, well-known men. They're here to testify. That is a special head theorem. It is not only the courts and attorneys that use special head theorems. No, it are you, since you are part of life. A special head theorem is an excuse. And I don't mean that in the crudest sense. It's not limited to that. But it's a continual operation that there are special head theorems at work, and whatever I do, whatever has happened, generally there's a special head theorem, whether it's in common usage or whether it's just one that I seem to have conjured up. Yeah, well, I guess I was drunk again this weekend, but I don't know, you don't know how, all my life I've worried I have a very poor sexual self-image of myself, and my latest girlfriend just left me. I'm not saying it's right to get drunk. I wreck my car and I end up in jail again, and there are more and more blood vessels bursting in my little nose the older I get. And so I'm not really trying to excuse it, but special head theorem. And there's no such thing. Oh, it is if you're living on that level. Or to say I cannot seem to get along with people of the opposite sex. I can't seem to get along with my family. I can't seem to get along with women because of my past experiences with my family. It's a special head theorem. And you've got to find out that they are to be abandoned. Those are some of the crudest partial rules for this game available for people involved with this. That from some way from here up, I am a special case. There are special theorems that apply to this, and there ain't. As long as you continue to apply, and you allow your partner to apply special head theorems to you, the partnership is never in any danger of breaking up. You're never in any grave danger of undergoing any kind of severe change, because you can continue to apply special head theorems to yourself with a continuing belief from you or the partner one that you are engaged in some kind of battle or some kind of secret awakening. But simultaneously, you feel as though part of this battle is involved with working out problems in the area signified by special head theorems. And one possible crude verbal explanation or pointing I can give you is that's just killing time. It's widely held, and life in general in this part of the world at least would support you and say that is true. One way to get a better grasp of what one is, to come to grips with one's shortcomings, and then to, hopefully, as the concept may be, to become a better person for it, is to understand these peculiar problems that are unique to man, going under what I label for you the special head theorems. If you seem to be antagonistic toward the opposite sex, it's got nothing to do with special head theorems. If you got the potential to be an alcoholic, it's got nothing to do with special head theorems. It's got nothing to do with your brain or your mind. It's got something to do with your brain, perhaps, but not your so-called mind. It's got nothing to do with anything that could have, quote, happened to your mind. It's got something to do with what happened to you genetically. There's something going on in the brain for what is referred to as consciousness, that is, the mind as opposed to the brain itself. Nothing. I am very depressed, and it has to do with special head theorems. It has something to do with enzymes, has something to do with hormones, has something to do with the biochemical makeup of your brain and other systems. But insofar as there's a special head theorem, I'm depressed, because my mother was very depressed, and she made me depressed, damn it. Your mother may have been depressed. Very likely she was very depressed. But it was not her living environment that made you depressed. My father was a drunk, and it upset me so much that I'll be down if it didn't make me start drinking. That's a special head theorem. No, there's very likely the same kind of genetic quirk in you that was in your father, but it's not to be found, is not to be understood through any special head theorem, because those are all dreams. They're all partial reflections of reality. It's an expansion for life. It's taken it, my God, 5,000 years almost to get past the point that the Greeks and some of the Chinese were already writing about. Their yellow circuit was already playing with, not the majority of them, but enough of them that's been remembered, that it turned into the so-called science in our lifetimes, in the last 5, 6 decades, into the so-called science of psychology. It only took life 5,000, 6,000 years. It didn't change that much. It just got to be more widely accepted. And it's gotten so widely accepted now that it's about to fall apart. It's a new day coming. But still, in general, is the feeling that there are special head theorems. There are special cases that apply only from here up. That human behavior, my feelings, can only be explained from here up. Might as well be explained through the liver, the kidneys. They're connected to it. And the biochemistry that is at the basis of your desire to drink, your desire to beat up men or women, your desire to be depressed, it eventually goes through from here down. It is a part of it. That was all I was going to say about the special head theorems, is you cannot use that. And I was not intending, as I noted, to make a long exposition on this tonight. And that's why I made it short the first time, as I was trying to prod you in to the fact of me just stating you cannot embrace, you cannot tolerate special head theorems, but to realize that you and everyone else does. And you can't do it. It has no validity. It explains nothing. It took life, 6,000 of our years, to decide. Well, that don't hardly explain shit. It did well enough, or life wouldn't have done it. But it's already reaching the point right now, even while I'm here, that psychology, psychiatry itself is undergoing a gradual, major upheaval. Even just out in the ordinary world. That alcoholism in the last 6 or 7 years has gone from being a social disgrace, gone from being a personality weakness, to being a disease. That is some progress. Life is expanding. And bit by bit, psychiatry is beginning to dismiss some of the total acceptance that traumas cause X phenomenon. They just finally got confronted with the fact that, hey, we can distill and even reproduce certain hormones and give it to somebody, and fuck what they say about their childhood. Simply in a matter of minutes or hours, they're over it. And they can lay on the couch the rest of their life and try and tell me about their mother, and we find there's certain enzymes that we can produce, that the body naturally produces, and they seem to have a shortage, and we give it to them in a pill, and 30 minutes later they say, hey, I'm not depressed. I forgot what it was like. I never felt like this. You know? Please write me out a lifetime prescription and give me your address, and I'll send you a card every year. And I wish you happy holidays. There are no special head theorems available for someone involved with this. There simply are not. From here up, you are not unusual. Not in the ordinary sense. That there are no special theorems to excuse, to explain this. It's only this that believes that. Which is always, some of you should find that to be a case of fascinating justice, the way life arranges these things. That the one thing that believes in it is the one thing that excuses itself. It's the one thing that explains itself. I just personally am thankful that the bowels and the stomach can't talk, or we'd all be in a world of trouble. You can work on that later. I got a few other areas I think you will find of increasing interest. Most of the rest of what I plan to say has to do with sex. One thing, this comes up piece by piece. It comes out through experience. It comes out through people asking me questions in advance. It comes out with people asking me questions after the fact. Couples that get involved with this, there is no assurance that your relationship is doomed. Now, I have, at public occasions, oft times in the past, mentioned something connected with this. I have written about it, and generally what I said. If not publicly, to people that tried to get involved with this, I have pointed out that there is, in particular, a distinct possibility of a relationship breaking up if one person gets involved in this and the other one does not. That's the most common question. And so at times in the past, as some of you remember, I had addressed that, just speaking in general to people, to groups of people. I hate to keep stripping every semblance of mysticism from this, but let me point out to you that this could be true in other areas. It could be true, as you should know, people will even claim it's true, that a man and wife break up, and she says it's over the fact that he became a fanatic following the Cubs every year. That he was at the ballpark any time that the Cubs were in town, or maybe bowling. That the guy, 5 nights a week, he goes bowling, and she has no interest in bowling. He's never home. The kids don't know. They think he's a milkman. All right, I picked a crude example, perhaps, bowling. If you start moving up the scale out of the red circuit and you get into some area that apparently the interest that one partner has that the other one does not share, when it seems to be getting closer to calling upon and claiming the spirit, the soul, the mind of a person. That is, one person decides, I'm tired of being a Baptist, I'm going to become a Catholic. I'm going and take all the lessons they take, I'm going to learn how to make all the signs and kneel and do the cross, and I'm going to have candles. And it would apparently be, let's say, from some general viewpoint, a worthwhile thing. The person was not a practicing Baptist. Perhaps they were even an atheist. And now they have become religious. And the other partner says, I ain't got time for that. But this one partner goes to Mass every day. They don't ever come home and beat their wife. You surely see, that's just the way things work, that there is a distinct possibility that relationship, that marriage is going to break up. So it's not just simply this. It's not just some mystical vibrations going on. Now, I'll grant you that from certain viewpoints it could have seemed to be more acute here, but don't think about this being some mystical certainty that if you get involved with this and your present partner is not, then for sure we're in trouble. I will point out, look at the number of people here. You people in other cities do not know this necessarily, but of all the people here, how many relationships came in and then broke up, and then you went with somebody that's here in the group and you stayed a while and then it broke up? I don't know what certainty you want involved with this, and your present partner is not, then for sure we're in trouble. I will point out, look at the number of people here. You people in other cities do not know this necessarily, but of all the people here, how many relationships came in and then broke up, and then you went with somebody that's here in the group and you stayed a while and then it broke up? I don't know what certainty you want. I cannot guarantee the continuation of any relationship, but I have never, and I am not now, trying to tell you that all relationships are doomed when you get involved with this, whether your partner gets involved with this with you or whether they don't. There is no cosmic predestination that's going to fall apart, any more than it is if you took up bowling to a fanatical degree and your partner did not. There's a very distinct possibility that on the surface, by all accounts, bowling was right at the heart of the crack-up of this relationship. So don't just think that this is just for sure it's going to keep me from ever sustaining a relationship or it's going to break up my present one. Maybe, maybe not. Another little something that I think all of you will find of interest, I've never pointed out. I couldn't resist. A term just flew into my little brain. A genetic sexual shadow show. DeWitt, I receive from out of town, other cities, and from here, from you people, a fair number of notes throughout the year from women that are involved with a man here in the group. And they will write me under some guise, or it may just be thrown in with some questions or other comments, that they will make some notice, or they'll comment as to their man's strength and assurance. You know what it seems to mean to them, but they just speak of it, and they're touched by it, and they're expressing, in a sense, admiration. expressing a joy at having such a man. I then get notes from men here in the group. Expressing their fears and uncertainties. You do know I did not bring this up to get a laugh. But this is not uncommon. Need I say more? Perhaps, but I won't. It's something I continue to receive notes about and questions from these newer people out of town. I get them from people that's read just these public books of mine, and then I get continuing little notes, some of them outright notes and some sort of hidden, having to do with homosexuality. And I have never, in general, it finally struck me, ever made any real comment on this, and so I'm going to do so. The general gist of the notes, 99% of them are from men. But the general gist of the notes is an expression of fear, or it's an expression from some people who write me, some I have met, some I have not met, but they're watching these tapes. The admission is that they are either homosexual or they feel like they might be. And part of it is them trying to, from their viewpoint, smell me out to hint that I might be, to see if I'm going to throw them out or to condemn them. The other notes are from men that are expressing some fear of their sexuality. Now, I do get some notes, and some of this, I say I get notes, I might as well admit the truth. Some of you already figured out. Some of this stuff, I don't get all the men notes I say I do. I just use it to make you feel better. So that you won't feel like I'm reading minds. It just gives it a homier approach. But at any rate, from women also I get notes, and from some of it I don't get notes, but I'm simply aware of it. Of women, if they had to express it, it would be something like this. I didn't coin this term, I don't think. It's in general usage. That they have some doubt or some fear about their femininity, that is, their sexuality. But back specifically to when I started to speak on a bit of direct homosexuality. First, everyone who has any interest in this, those of you who are, those of you who fear that you are, those of you that think you are and that nobody knows it, anywhere in there, pick out any area that you like. First, quite simply, you just must see the fact that homosexuality is in the minority. That has nothing to do with any objective right or wrong. We're back talking about life's contrary structure. We're back talking, in a sense, about life and its partner. How else do you explain that life has large numbers of people say, here is a sexual activity I would like to do, and then at least an equally large number of people in this same body says, no, no, have mercy, no, don't even think it. And I've asked you before in various ways, not referring specifically in the past to homosexuality, but I've asked you to what avail? I've asked you what possible use could life be making of this situation? Does no one see any possibility on another scale that life has its own partner? That life's in a partnership? No? What the hell with you? First, realize, without any judgment, that homosexuality is in the minority, to say the very least. Now, everyone surely sees that. The questions still make noise. The questions are always on the basis, you understand, of some form of self-condemnation of those who may be hearing this, and those that may even be here or getting this on tape. Let us say that you are homosexual. You must realize that there's some form of self-condemnation or you would not be asking about it. Everyone surely understands that. But again, let me remind you, everybody is filled with self-condemnation. That's part of the partner's job, remember. You know, if you're not homosexual, it's going to be something else. Those who are homosexual are those asked questions. Also note this. The feeling would be, let us say that as far back as you can recall, you felt as though you were homosexual. That you just can't remember feeling otherwise. And now you still are filled with self-condemnation. What life would have people do, which it does, is you would blame it on the environment. Well, hey, I seem to have been born this way. But then the majority of people are not, and in fact the majority of people seem to condemn it. And therefore they've made me condemn myself. Now that makes every piece of sense in the world up until now. But I might add, I'm even aware of the fact, just in general, that psychiatry and medicine's opinion has changed that in the last few years, but let me tell you, there is no such thing as someone picking up homosexuality. If you are homosexual, you were born that way. There is nothing in the environment, there is no experience that made somebody become homosexual. Some of you may be aware of this. The last big survey that somebody tried to do of sexuality, I think the figure was something like 34, 36% of the males they interviewed had had a homosexual experience. And that goes all the way back, I'm sure, to childhood. Because of some of you women, if you don't know it, when boys are young enough, they'd do almost anything. I mean, when sex starts going, if you girls don't know that, boys would try, they'd do almost anything. But at any rate, taking their figures, which I don't have any reason to doubt, it was supposedly, it was one of those big clinics, it was somebody, it's an accepted figure, that it was well in excess of 1 out of 3 men in this country had had a homosexual experience. Then you're left with the continuing feeling that in some way I have acquired this, and in some way I am being condemned for it, and in some way I have got to change it. Or as it's presented to me, whether it be overtly or more subtly, is the kind of question, should I change it? Are you going to make me change it if I stay involved with this? If you were born homosexual, it is genetic, and it is not going to be changed. You could alter behavior. In times past, I guess behavior, well, it had to be directly affected when the laws of this country or the individual states were more stringently upheld. Times have simply changed. You people have lived through it as well as I have, as they used to call it, being in the closet. To now they have parades. They have Gay Liberation Day or Gay Appreciation Day. Those of you that have had these kind of fears that continually to come out, and I get questions about, or sometimes I just see them written all over people, that, oh my God, am I about to become homosexual? Or you don't know some of the weird daydreams I've had. I feel like just any minute now I may break down and just become gay. You know, if circumstances were just right, or if I weakened, or I better not have a drink. I feel like if I got about half drunk, I'd suddenly become gay. All right. If all of that was possible, any of that, then you're a homosexual to start with. But it's not some vague imaginary line, those of you that seem to continually worry about it. But now you would know, you're old enough. You are simply erotically attracted to one sex or the other. And it cannot be changed, and I've got nothing to do with changing it. This has something to do, it has everything to do with self-condemnation. It has everything in the world to do with being in that same partnership wherein there is something that one of you, pick out either one you want in any given instance, that one of you says, this is what I want, and likewise the partner says, that's exactly what we won't do. Do not sit in a closet. Do not feel as though you're going through some personal suffering. Look back upon life itself, just what I've described. There is a segment, they're in the minority, but there is a segment of people, always have been, that are homosexual, are attracted erotically, sexually to the same sex, and there is a equally, to say the least, large number of people that continue to condemn it. Large parts of body's life. They condemn it on religious grounds, social grounds, psychological grounds, and lots of people down at the Red Circuit just say, well, hell, I don't like it. You know, fuck them, let's beat them up. But don't look just in one place or the other. Don't just look at life and say, well, wait, life is arranged in a cockeyed manner. You still don't understand that life has a partner. You don't understand the contradictory nature, even though you're surrounded by it, and at least once or twice a month I point out some example of it, that life has raised up a number of people, always has, that are homosexual. Simultaneous, at that time and place, life raises up at least an equal number of people that condemn it. But then inside the individual, you got the same situation. Somebody who finds themselves from day one, from the first time they recall getting horny, it was horny towards somebody of the same sex, and almost as soon, even if they didn't know the words, even if they didn't know it was against the laws of their religion, even if they didn't know it was against the laws perhaps of their state, the person says, well, as soon as I realized that, I tried to quit taking showers at high school or at grammar school. As soon as I did it, I kind of went into hiding. You didn't even know anything about religion, perhaps. But immediately, the partner said, no. Anyone of you who get this, who hear this, that are homosexual or thought that you had been kind of hiding it from me or that you've been trying to hide it from yourself, I also do not want you to feel that you're in a special class because you are not. It's just another form of self-condemnation. It does seem to be more intense, I'll grant you this, because of the great power of sex itself. But as far as there being some special locale, some theorem, some excuse, some explanation, some consideration that, hey, poor old you're homosexual, and in some way life is picking on you. But if you get involved with this, I will give you special care and consideration. Now, those who have been around a while know that ain't true to begin with. I don't give anybody that. But you have got to realize you're in the minority. Life brings this up continually and has people do it, and it makes them condemn themselves in the same way that life brings them up over here, and over here brings up another group of people, at least equal in number, to condemn this group, and they're both coming from life. They're both coming from you, if this applies to you, that this is how I'm attracted sexually, and oh my God, that I condemn myself for it. It is not you condemning yourself. It is not other people condemning you for doing it. It is life's contradictory structure that is a part of the growth process. If any of you could carry this a little bit further, I might point out that you could see sexual orientation as being genetic, and you could see this kind of self-condemnation as apparently environmental. I didn't catch many people, so I'll go ahead. If any of you could see a piece of that, we're talking about the way it appears, the way that life has it depicted in people's ordinary consciousness. But if you could carry it that far, then you could see this kind of continuing question that life has always presented through man of, is something heretical or is it environmental? You could see that as the two voices of life's own partnership. If any of you get a glimpse of that, you'd realize when there's never been a satisfactory answer to that. Because sure as hell, I can stand here and do it for life. I can prove that homosexuality, I can do it with the power of my great voice, mind, and speaking personality, that without any doubt, homosexuality is environmentally produced. If you don't like that, you like a better example, alcoholism, bad temper, depression. Then I can turn right around and just as easily, satisfactorily prove, if you would follow me at all, that all such matters are genetic in nature, that there is no other possibility. Can anyone see that that argument can never be satisfied at line level consciousness? And could you see that in a sense that that could be, hint, hint, a reflection of the two voices of life's own partnership? But instead of me calling it life and life's partner, what if we just name the voices just for a second? One, the cause of environmental, and one, the cause genetic. And according to where you're standing in life's body, according to where life is standing in relationship to itself at any given time, in any given place, one seems to overwhelm the other. One seems to be the explanation, that there is only one way to explain drug addiction. No reasonable person would put drugs in their body and slowly or fastly kill themselves. The body is not arranged to commit suicide. It's environmental. People would not be criminals were it not for their unsavory environmental conditions. But you can turn right around and you can prove it the other way. Totally as unsatisfying as the other one was. And the yellow circuit can never decide which is which. But as always, what if the questions are wrong? What if the approach is wrong? What if you could see all of this as being a possible reflection of life's own partnership? I hadn't repeated this in a while. I just mentioned it a little last week in the particular case of someone here. Let me point out any of you who get hurt, back problems, anything. If you get hurt, you do whatever is necessary. You take whatever steps humanly possible. If it just involves laying down and not moving for months, to rectify the situation. Whenever pertinent, I would like to hear about it. But you have got to take care of yourself. And I find there are even other people, since last week, more has come out in the open of additional people I didn't know about with specific back problems. And I'll have the old doctor here tell you this, that there's only one surefire cure besides magic. I'm talking about real magic, healing. There's only one prescription for back problems. And it's spelled, well, it's HT. That's horizontal time. But if any of you are just completely overtaken with a desire to go have a bone crusher manipulate your spine, have a chiropractor do whatever they do, I'm not laughing, go do it. You should definitely see through ordinary means, x-rays, and someone other than a chiropractor to find out if there is some kind of structural damage to find what it is. But some of the most severe back problems, they could x-ray you enough to fill up a Walt Disney movie, and they won't see anything and you can't move. And those kind of back problems, I'll tell you right now, you can save yourself money. After you once get a first opinion, I'll give you the last opinion, the last prescription. There's not but one sure cure, and that's time. But you take care of yourself. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't worry about if you've got back problems like that. Don't you go out and try to go ahead and run your 3 miles every day like I insist you must. You people got to know better than that. You got to take care of whatever it is. Of course, I might also add, I should make another rule that you don't get but one back problem per lifetime. If you get one, I'm talking about the kind that is almost incapacitating for some length of time. If you get one of those, then you get a second one. I guess I'd still feel for you a little bit, but not a whole lot. Because after you have that once, you should protect your back like Brooke Shields does her. Like the Pope does his favorite dress. I got one. Somebody has recently been sending me little pages of observations. One of them I picked out. I couldn't resist. It just seemed to fit into the night. The one that this person handed in tonight, a list of some. It's extremely hard for preteens to take orgasms on faith. And I think we'll conclude by this one that someone handed in. I'm going to rewrite it a bit as I go along, just in one or two small instances. But it goes more or less like this. I was driving along the other day eating an apple when it occurred to me how marvelous it is the way the taste buds had evolved to the point of it being a pleasure to eat certain tasty foods. Be able to take it in little bits at a time, eat on it from a different direction. And also how marvelous it is that the animals, with their propensity for abundant foods, and tasty foods that is, seem to be the animals that survive. Next paragraph. Of course, this hypothesis is blown all to hell by the presence of an overabundance of Brussels sprouts. I would like to leave you with a reminder of those possible sermon topics of good cheer and its strain on the partnership, in case I never get around to actually plugging in a sermon into these great topics. And above the line data and the unnatural stress on the partnership.